Welcome back to the Impact Driven Leader podcast. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhuff. So glad you're joining in today, listening, whether you're a subscriber and you listen in weekly or somebody shared this with you. Thank you for being here. If you're not a subscriber, love for you. Wherever you listen with Spotify, Apple, yada, 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 wherever you listen to this podcast, love for you to hit that subscribe button so that way you're aware of every episode. Comes out every Friday. Glad that you're here. And thank you for all those that leave a rating, review. Let me know what your thoughts are, how you were impacted by each episode. I love to see it, hear it, but I also know it helps other people get the content information that comes from all the wonderful guests that I have. Today, I get to share a conversation I had with Cody Foster. Cody may not be a name you know unless you're a Darren Hardy fan. We'll talk a little bit about that. Darren has often referenced Cody in a lot of his programs. Cody's been a client friend of Darren's for many years. He actually lists that as an impactful relationship he has. So we just wait for the rest of the conversation. Cody and his partner, David Callahan, are co-founders of Advisors Excel. I've got to know them through the John Maxwell exchange program that I go to each year. And it's relationships with guys like Cody, who, leads this organization where they have over 700 employees. They benefit thousands of advisors and their organizations throughout the country. I think he shares over $8 billion that they are impacting over assets of over 20 million in management. Pretty substantial financial organization. Probably one of the most humble, likable, genuine guys that you'll ever meet, and thankful that I got to meet him. And so glad to share this conversation because Cody shares what's important to him as a leader, and it's really leading the way. It's having the desire and heart to grow. So get ready to take some notes. Be stretched, be expanded as your leadership role, wherever that may be, even if it's just yourself. You can use what Cody shares today to be a better leader. And that's what this podcast is about, is to help other leaders get better, get healthy, because I had to get healthy too. Glad you're here. I'll see you at the end. Cody, good to see you again, man.
Yeah,
it's been a little while.
Good to be seen.
Yeah, I had such an enjoyable time spending with you last November, and excited to chat with you here on the podcast. And welcome to the Impact Driven Leader podcast. I know you've said that you listened to a few episodes, so hopefully this is one of the ones that is exciting to you because of the story that you get to tell. For our audience that maybe doesn't know who Cody Foster is, which I don't know why they wouldn't know. I mean, you're bald.
I'm not sure why they would know, but yeah.
I mean, you're a bald, good-looking guy. I mean, we just need more of those in the world. I'd love for you to tell the audience about yourself, your firm, Advisors Excel, and just kind of go into that, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try and give you the real quick version, and then I can fill in any gaps if you want to ask. But started this company. My first job out of college was actually in financial services. So Advisors Excel, we wholesale products to independent financial advisors. That wasn't my first job. I worked for a company that did something very similar in 2004. So going back a little while now, about 18 years ago, David, who's my partner still to this day, we decided we wanted to just go be financial advisors. So we did that for a year, left the company we worked at. And candidly, pretty early into that new business career of trying to be a financial advisor, realized there was a lot of things we just didn't know. And as we were trying to find an organization to help us learn some of the things on how to build and run a successful advisory practice, just thought maybe there was an opportunity to create something around that. So in 2005, we started Advisors Excel, which is really an organization trying to help good financial advisors become great business owners. That's what we talk about all the time. And started that with another partner, Derek. So the three of us started that. And it's just kind of, I feel like it's steadily grown. Other people would say it's grown really, really fast, but I've been living it for 17 years. So it just feels like a long journey from that standpoint, but kind of started with the three of us. Today, we've got about 750 employees. We support about 700 independent financial advisors across the country, kind of sit in between them and the insurance and investment companies, the products that they would use to meet their clients' kind of planning needs. And so, it's been a little bit of a crazy journey, and probably a lot of leadership and growth things that we'll talk about along the way of that journey also. So
do this for me though. And this will, to me, kind of tip your hat.
Okay.
You talk about the people that you serve, the size, the scope of that, but what number, what metric as you're going through, and you kind of mentioned it, some people have said you've gone exponentially. To you, it's just been, kind of going along. What number determines that? What number matters to you?
Well, so obviously the way we get paid is when advisors sell stuff or gather assets is probably an easier way to describe that. So we make our money in a few ways. One, insurance business that they sell, so annuities, life insurance, and then we have an investment arm, AE Wealth Management, that manages assets on behalf of the advisors for their clients. So with Fidelity, TD Ameritrader, the custodians that we would manage those through. So to maybe put in perspective, our first year, all we did was annuities. So going back to 2005, and we did about $40 million in total premium. So just new assets coming into annuity products. Last year, we did almost $8 billion in annuity sales, which would make us, in that kind of our space, probably the largest as far as a distributor goes. And then we're managing right now about $20 billion in like assets under management. So it's from the size and the premium, it's grown a lot. But, also we go from, that first year we probably worked with maybe a dozen financial advisors that we were trying to service to now about 700 offices. A lot of those offices have 3, 4, maybe half a dozen advisors working in them. So just the size and scope of trying to serve and support those advisors also has grown, substantially.
And so, what part of that excites you?
Kind of what I went back to, we talk all the time about our mission or noble purpose of helping good advisors become great business owners so they can help people have an amazing retirement. It's probably that second aspect, watching someone who may have been a good salesperson, may have been good at the planning aspect, but really figure out how to build and grow a business. So to take someone who was maybe, I'll give you a real example, our top advisor last year when he joined us, probably had 4 or 5 employees, was doing about $25 million a year in new assets that they would bring in. Now has probably 35 or 40 employees, has offices in 8 cities in 6 different states. Last year brought in about $500 million in new assets. So I think to see them grow and scale the business side of it has been probably the most rewarding. But I would say the other thing is just the relationships you build along the way, right? I think that's the best thing about being an entrepreneur business is the relationships. And you get both sides. It's probably the one thing I didn't anticipate. We're recording this today. Last week, Thursday through Sunday, I was in Jamaica for one of our advisors' weddings, which was a cool experience. I got home Sunday. Yesterday, I actually flew to Traverse City, Michigan to attend a funeral of one of our advisors who had cancer and passed away. So you're there for a lot of highs and a lot of lows. That's probably not something I anticipated 17 years ago when we started this, but I think that's honestly, it's probably the most exciting and rewarding part is the relationships you build, the people you meet has been the most fun.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, that comes across in our experience, the little bit of time that we got to spend with each other, that intentionality to person, it's something that David holds on to. And you just mentioned it. It's not the assets, like whatever. It's the people. And it's, both of us are John Maxwell fans, and he talks about, leadership multiplies. And when you can multiply leadership, you can multiply the principles, and that's when you make an impact.
Yep.
And that's something I've appreciated from you and David and what I see you guys doing. So what have been some of the keys that you've said, hey, not only having that as a mentality mindset yourselves, but how do you share that with others? Because obviously, to me, that is what helps that top advisor you just described go from what he was to what he's become.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't even know where to start there.
Well, we got time. We got time here.
So you mentioned John, which is where we met for the first time. One of the things that he says that I just think is so true is that everything rises and falls with leadership. And I think even as you look at my own probably growth and leadership journey over the past. This not even say past 20 years, even to before we started this company and I was in a leadership role and probably some of the things I did poorly. It's one, I think, just realizing how important it is. And maybe that's the first thing that we, as an advisor moves to us, and we always have new advisors joining our firm, that's one of the things that we stress, and like more than anything else, is like, for your business to grow, you as the leader have to grow, right? That's just probably the fundamental thing. And I think even, if you were to use Advisor Success as an example of that, I tell people all the time, like Dave and I have just constantly committed to personal growth and development, because we know the leader that the organization is going to need as we continue to grow looks a lot different than the leader we were even a few years ago. I use the example a lot. I say, if you hopped in a time machine and went back 10 years ago and picked Dave and I up, we were in the same exact role we're in today, right? Kind of co-CEOs, co-founders. But if you picked us up 10 years ago and dropped us in today, it wouldn't take long for us to run this place into the ground, just because we weren't equipped, as the leaders. So I think that's the most important thing for any business to grow. The leader has to grow. The leader has to set the pace. The leader, we talked a little bit about Darren Hardy. He always says it best. He says the leader has to be the most, right? They have to be the hardest working, the most committed to personal growth and development, the most committed to the client experience. So I think that's one of the things, is just stressing, even within our own journey, how important that continued growth as a leader is. And then the other thing we do a lot of, I think we talked about this, is we're constantly doing events where we're bringing our advisors together to learn and see how the other advisors are doing it. So just constantly putting them in those environments where they get to see that modeled, not just leadership, but the growth that comes with that is a big part of it.
So let's talk about that one real quick.
Okay.
The last 2 years have made that very, very, very difficult. What have you seen because of that?
Well, a couple things. One is, I think the last 2 years made us realize how, in fact, I say this now, that the most valuable thing we do is bring people together in learning-rich environments, to be able to be around other great thought leaders, great business owners, great advisors. And to see, we probably pushed the envelope a little bit more than other firms, so we had a big event in January of 2020. It's our big kickoff event that we do every single year. Then obviously COVID hit in March, and we, like everyone, didn't do anything for a while, but we did do a live event in December of that year. So we kind of rolled the dice a little and brought about 100 people together. We tried a lot of virtual stuff over that period of time, like I think a lot of people did, and it was okay. I just don't, it's hard to describe how getting away from your business and being around other people, you and I, it wasn't like a formal thing. Remember, we were sitting on the riverboat, just started talking, and then, just kind of spontaneous conversation happens. So one, yeah. I would say the most important thing we saw over the last couple of years is just how important that is, right? And I would say, even before we started recording, I asked you if you're going back to the Maxwell event in November, how important for anyone in a leadership role, if you're not carving out some time to get away from your business and go put yourself in an environment where you're going to be able to learn from, meet other people, connect with other people. I think that's maybe the most important thing I saw over the last couple of years. You adjust, you figure out all the ways that you can deliver some of the content, but not having the people together, I think, was a big impact. So if anything, it's probably made us double down on this a little bit. We're probably doing more events. In fact, I think we have our chief marketing officer was just telling me, I think 57 live events we're doing this year. We actually had one going on today in our office with about 60 people in here. So I think just the importance of it was probably the biggest realization over the last couple of years.
Now, as I've seen those events, as I've kind of watched what you've done, especially had some mutual friends come and speak at some of those events, be involved in those events, how impactful is that to bring in outside voices from outside either the industry or outside of from, what you guys are seeing every day to offer a completely different perspective? I think about, I've had Shaquille O'Neal at an event. You've had, David Nurse, the author. You've had, Darren Hardy present, like really different, but yet people all committed to positively getting better, which I think is all part of that. It's all people of the same fold, but yet These are people completely outside of the financial advising industry, the industry that you guys operate in.
So I think there's something interesting that I think we've always done from day one. One, you're always going to learn at anything we do. There's always going to be a component where you're learning from other advisors who are still actively out there running a business very much like yours. So you can learn some of the things that are very specific to what they do and how they do it. But one of the things I think that we saw early on was that can become, I don't know if ancestral is the right word or not, but just if everyone's doing the exact same things and you don't have these new ideas flowing in, it can just kind of stymie the growth. So I think, early on we said we also need to bring in some of the best thought leaders from outside of our space to just challenge us. And I think what's been neat is to watch how, use Darren. You bring in a Darren Hardy who shares ideas from all these other businesses that he's, had the opportunity to spend time around, to then watch our advisors figure out how to model that in their own advisory practice and tweak it and fine tune it. So I think it's just part of the reason I think our advisors have grown at such, kind of meteoric rates is because we're constantly giving them new ideas that may be a little outside of our industry, but they can figure out how to adapt and adjust that to it. And then, there's just a component to it that I think is, I don't know if motivational is the right way to describe it. It's probably not, but just being able to spend some time with someone who can inspire you to think bigger is the other thing. I think our industry in general has always had this certain kind of way business is done. But when you bring in people that challenge you to think bigger about it, it's just, I think it's why a lot of our advisors have businesses that they never dreamed of before, because they constantly see other people, even if it's outside of our industry, doing it. So I think just some different voices, some different perspectives is a really, really good thing.
I want to jump real quick to, as I'm thinking about it, how have you, obviously you and David have had this commonly held, and Derek involved there too, commonly held like, hey, this needs to be a component because it's happening. So therefore at some point you all had to agree that this is important.
Yep.
Right. As a leader, as a co-leader, as people listening in that are listening to this, they're like, man, okay, this is great. Yes, I want to bring in people, and they walk into that, the CEO, if they're the CMO, they walk into the CEO office or whatever that may be, and they're like, no, we don't have the money for that. No, it's not going to happen. No, it's the middle of whatever pandemic, and we can't do those things. How important do you now look back and see that being so aligned on one or two things has really allowed you to kind of move with such fervor forward?
So a couple things I would say. One, generally speaking, I believe that the business that creates the best experience will always win. And so a big part of what we try and do with our events, they're educational, you're learning, you're inspired, but a lot of it is there's a certain culture and experience that we're trying to create that people almost look for, and they do, right? People look forward to these events because of the experience that we've created around them. So you mentioned, in January we had Shaquille O'Neal at our event, and he was great. He was probably one of the maybe the toughest interview I've ever done, just because he jokes around a lot. You can't tell if he's joking or serious. But man, people were there was like a buzz about like Shaq's going to be at this event, right? So there's a little bit of that, just the experience in this loyalty with your customer, in a situation, as you said, if I'm the CMO trying to explain this to my CEO, there's a big part of it that is about the experience, as much as anything, and just what that does to create kind of this raving fan community in your business, I think is a big part of it. And then the second thing I would say is like, I don't know a better place to invest money than at least in our business, right? So I don't know that this applies to every business, but in the personal development and growth of your people, like I just don't know a better place that you would invest your money as far as like a return on investment. So I've seen it, I guess I would say the other benefit of doing a lot of these events is we usually have 75 to 100 employees at them also who are growing, also. So not only are our advisors growing, but the teammates that work here at Advisors Excel are sitting there participating, hearing this stuff also. most of our key kind of VPs have been through all Darren's training. I've got a chance to hear him speak a lot, Tony Robbins, a lot of those people. So just to watch the growth of the people, it's just a great place to be investing money also.
Which one of those has helped you grow the most?
You mean people that we've had in?
Yeah. Or, anything that you're like, man, that was a catalyst for me.
I will tell you, I think Darren Hardy's, and so I'm going to hit him up, that he needs to pay me something. No, he used to call it High Performance Forum. I think it's now called his Business Masterclass, is probably the best event I've ever been to personally. And now I'll preface all this by saying, it's structured in a way that I like to learn. So, what it is it's a fire hose for 3 days of every idea he's ever captured around sales, marketing, leadership, culture. And I like that. I don't like much fluff in my events. I like just hit me with everything you got. I'll take it from there and I'll dissect what I want to implement and what I do. So I would say for me, the way I like to learn, that's been the best event I've ever been. I've been to it 3 times actually over the years. But what I'll say has also been the best out of that. Darren put together this group and kind of an elite group alumni group for a while, and then he stopped doing that. But there were a dozen of us, and Darren's one of those who have still continued to get together. Was twice a year, kind of slowed down to once a year during COVID, and that's probably been as beneficial of anything. Just being able to get together with a like-minded group of people, all from different industries, and just share kind of what we're doing, what we're excited about, problems that we're having. A couple of the best leadership lessons I've learned over the last 10 years came from Dave Liniger, who was the founder of Remax. And one of them was literally sitting in a bar in Napa. I was frustrated with a few people that we had here. And I still remember it vividly to this day. He goes, Cody, I wish I would have learned early on at Remax that the people who get you here aren't the same ones who are going to get you here. Right. And he's like, I remain loyal to some people who didn't continue to grow as the company did. So, Darren's been a great friend and mentor, but it really started. I didn't know Darren at all until I went to that event, and I've been to it 3 times. We've probably had, 150, 200 advisors go through that event also. So that I would say is one of the best. Keith Cunningham's been another great kind of mentor and friend. I met him at one of Tony Robbins' Business Mastery events, and all of Keith's stuff is just great too. And again, kind of learning the way I like to learn. It's just no nonsense. He's going to give it to you straight and give you a lot of content too. How about you? That's an interesting question. What's been the best? And obviously,
it's good.
I say all that. The last 2 years, or last year and a half, I would say John Maxwell's probably been the biggest influence. We had him speak at one of our events, and then going to the exchange event that he does has been incredible. Mm-hmm. I went back and read pretty much, I don't know, I've probably got 6 books out since that November event.
Okay.
I forgot how good 21 Irrefutable Laws was. I hadn't read it for a long time, so he's been a huge one lately too. But yeah, curious how you would answer that.
So I'm going to say this real quick. So it's exciting. The 25th anniversary of 21 Irrefutable Laws is coming out in May of 2022. So look forward to that. That's a little wink and a nod to something exciting coming. But 2 individuals I would say have impacted me the most the last 5 or 6 years. John Maxwell is one of them. In the personal relationship, the impact of his whole entire organization, the ability, as you mentioned, kind of this going to events, building these relationships. I look at the relationship that you and I have to numerous other people that have been guests on this podcast that have come from that experience to where it's really hard wherever you live to replicate that.
Yep.
You can say, I'm going to go meet together with business owners and leaders in my community. It's possible. But it's not likely to be as impactful as when you go to a certain part of the country. It doesn't matter. You bring all the different people together that have the same value set.
Yep.
And I think that's what's really important. You and I, share this for the audience, we hit it off really quick. We were maybe one of 3 or 4 bald people in the crowd. Maybe that's a part of it, right? You got to stick together. But
we do.
It really, you go into that room with people and you're like, okay, there's no longer this showboat of like, this is who I am. It's like, no, you're here for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And when you can find yourself into those rooms, man, the genuine relationships and wanting to add value to each other, man, that's when all of a sudden great things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so John has done such a tremendous job of creating that. I think he really tries to encourage people to create that in their own organizations.
Yep.
Right. The other person is another John Gordon. And John Gordon, from the standpoint of, and this goes into my personal history, and I'd love, maybe use this as a kind of I'd say a tangent for you too. And I'm going to preface it this way. The person that you've become started off in a much different place. You talked about that. You and David 10 years ago is not the leader you are now, much less understanding that 10 years ago, 2012, when you started in 2005, or when you were in college in the late 90s or before, was not the leader you are today either.
Yep.
And the greatest thing that I learned from John Gordon is that you can become a positive person. And that probably did more to impact me than anything else. As his story goes, as he talks about in his, Power of Positive books, all those line books, is that he grew up a very negative person. His family's very, very negative. And he's like, no, I'm going to be positive. And I'm going to make that physical absolute change. And that's something that I had to do too. And, so that to me has just, those two individuals, as I share here, huge impact, and catalyst for all the additional learning. All the many of the same suspects that you bring up. Yes, I follow along in that same vein, but those two are probably, if I can incrementally say, well, this is a part of my character that changed tremendously, and this is a part of my demeanor that changed tremendously. Those two were most impactful.
That's cool. I don't think I told you this. John was one of our keynotes at our kickoff event in January, our big advisor event. But then we also had him come in. We do a day for all our employees where we shut the office down. It's like goals, for the new year. How did we do last year? New Year goals. And John came in and spoke to our entire team here at AE also. So I love him. He's awesome.
Yeah. And it's, I think here's the other part of that too, is sometimes, and I think you've mentioned this as well, John Gordon's about 10 years older than me. I think he's early 50s, something like that. John Maxwell obviously is, 75 now. But to me, both of those have given me a perspective of, that's a person modeling what I can aspire to be. Mm-hmm. Being around John Maxwell as close as I have, realized that he's got fallibilities, right? We all do, but yet he's worked through those. When he writes in his books about, he was not a good leader in his 20s and 30s. He was very successful, but he wasn't the leader that he became later because of everything he had to learn through the process and the people pouring into him. What's been most noting to me, and I said this to John one day, is as I've tried to catch up and read a lot of different things, whether it's Dale Carnegie, Norman Vincent Peale. Right now I'm on a big Peter Drucker kick. Yeah. Is how impactful those men, Napoleon Hill, you go through the list, how impactful those men were on people like John Maxwell. Where, I can sit there and I can listen to John Maxwell, and I've done enough reading. Otherwise, I'm like, oh, Peter Drucker said that. Yep. Oh, Napoleon Hill said, oh, Dale Carnegie said that. And to me, that's what's also encouraging to say, hey, these are people that have learned, implemented, taken it in, and then be transformed. And I want to do that, but I also want to help other leaders do that too. Yeah. You've done that. You've talked about doing that. You're doing that. So I want to know about the Cody that, what have you grown from? What Phoenix have you become?
Yeah, and before I say, I'll share maybe a few thoughts. John, the thing about him that I just love, and I've shared this with a few friends, is, here he was so take that event, right? I think John just turned 75, maybe.
Yeah, February.
And so these events, that first day, he spoke most of the morning, right? He not spoke, he's pouring into us. He's sharing everything he's got. Then he interviews people in the afternoon. So he's on stage all day, right? And you've done this too, right? It's exhausting. Then, we went and did this cool experience at the Nashville house and went to that songwriter night. It was 1 a.m. when we got back to the hotel, and I'm just wiped, and the next morning I'm kind of a little tired coming down there. And John was there all day. He did the work all day, there all night, back the next day. There was just something inspiring. What I told people is I saw John. I actually met him at an event with Darren probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I said, the last 2 times I've seen him, he's the best I've ever seen him. Right. Just to see him at that age, realizing like he's just like got so much to give, and how, just how empowered it makes him is pretty fascinating to watch. So that's been fun. And just, people always say that, like, why wouldn't you sell the business and retire? And I'm like, and do what? Like, I would rather do what he's doing. It's like, I think my best years are way, way ahead of me. Right. I'm just starting to learn where I need to be. So, I would say a couple things. So even kind of have a unique story getting into this business. So I was the first person in my family to go to college. Parents grew up in probably a, upper lower class family, I guess is what you would call it, kind of straddling that line. So first person in my family to go to college, kind of because of a scholarship a guy in my hometown endowed. And so came to school at Washburn University in Topeka. So that alone, just nothing in my background to prepare me for this, right? First person in my family to go to college, went to a small Division II school here in Topeka. My junior summer, my grandma, who's, one of my best friends kind of growing up, her and my grandpa got divorced when I was probably 4th or 5th grade. And they owned this restaurant together. She had taken it over. When I was a junior in college, she actually declared bankruptcy. And so even part of my inspiration for being in this industry is I didn't know anything about money. So that happened, and it was just kind of this gut punch. And so I went and got a job at a bank just because I wanted to learn more about money. I didn't have any ever. And so that kind of got me down this path of financial services, and really just wanting to, do more there. And then honestly, it's even what's been fulfilling about this job. I probably didn't answer this well earlier with this backstory, is like being able to help other business owners so they never end up in that position my grandma was in is candidly the most rewarding, right? Really helping them grow and build a great business. She knew how to run the restaurant. She didn't really know how to run the business side of it. And so that's a little part of it.
I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
One, because I think it touches emotionally. That's why, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's really why. And that's where, going back, as you shared that story earlier about that advisor that went from just a couple, people in his office to now, 30, 40, 50 people. But seeing such a bigger performance and impact that, he's a lot farther from those desperate days, because it obviously made a huge impact on you and your heart and your family.
Yep. Yeah, I say that, like even when advisors come and they're struggling, like I know, I guess I don't know personally exactly what that feels like, but I kind of lived through what it feels like to have a business. We lived in a small town, so it was like the town gossip, all that stuff, right? So I lived through that. And the other thing I would say, though, the positive of that is, my grandparents moved to Kansas from Southern California in the mid 70s, because my grandpa was just this entrepreneur, always had been. He's probably owned 10 different businesses since I've known him. So I always actually grew up around entrepreneurs too, and always thought it was really cool to own your own business. So I always kind of knew I wanted to do that. So that was one. I would say the second one, my first job out of college was at a company that does something similar to what we do or used to. Went through a few ownership changes, and Dave and I both, and Derek, our other partner, when we started this, both got put in leadership positions at a really early age, and I'd never led people. And actually got right before we were leaving to start being advisors, got removed from the leadership position I was in. I didn't really care because I knew I was leaving in a couple months. But the reason why is because our boss was very much a kind of an old military guy, not kind of, he was, ex-military guy. So our leadership style was very much a command control. Employees are going to cheat and steal from you, so you've got to, be on top of them all the time. And every day you have to look at their phone reports. And if they didn't make enough phone calls, you sit them down and discipline them. And that's just not who I am, right? It's not natural for me at all. And I was terrible at it. But I think what that has probably created at Advisors Excel is a leadership style that's very much the opposite of that, and has shown they can work really, really well, right? What I've found over the years is that actually, if you hire great people and kind of give them some direction on what's expected and free them up and don't micromanage the heck out of them, that they tend to do a really, really good job with that. So it was kind of funny to go from being removed from that leadership position to now, leading a company that's about, I don't know, 30 times the size that company was at the time I was taken out of that role.
That one of the things I wanted to ask you, and to me, this is very impactful for leaders to be able to grow from. And, we talked earlier about some of the people that have inspired you, and you just mentioned a leader and, how they, in a way, inspired you. And so what I want to ask is, other than that story, have you been more, to me, I would say you've been more driven by how not to do things
a little bit
than necessarily how to do things.
Yeah.
And to me, that's impactful. As I recently just read and thought about this, is like, there's something to learn from everyone. And, at first you glance, you hear that, you're like, all right, what am I positively going to learn from everyone?
Yep.
It's like, yes, that is possible. But there's also a lot of don't do that. Mm-hmm. Right. And if you share with people like, hey, don't make the same mistakes I've had. Here's what to learn from me. Don't do what I've done.
Yep.
And, learning through that process. And I think, that's imperative to know too, is that you can go down a path and realize, oh yeah, this isn't the right way forward. And having the humility to turn back and go the other way and find a better way forward is something I think leaders have to hold on to.
Yep.
That has to be a part of your mindset to say, I don't need to just push my head down and forward through everything, because that probably is going to lead me to a bad place.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. I think you said something that's spot on. You can learn a lot from both the good and bad, right? There's plenty of things to learn from the good. I always say, if I can shortcut my way to success by figuring out how someone else has done this and model that, great. But probably, I would say a lot of the culture that we've tried to build here, even at Advisors Excel, is based on all the things I hated at the place I used to work at. Hate may be a strong word, but I say, and even there, we would do things like that's, back then was like Zappos was kind of all the buzz, in the early mid 2000s. So like we would model things at that place so we brought in ping pong tables and, all these different things. But ultimately, I would tell you most people would, if you ask them, would tell you they wouldn't have felt like the company actually cared about them. So yeah. I say, like, we don't do any of those things here, but I would hope if you asked any employee who works here, like the first thing they would say is like, despite everything, I truly believe that Dave and Cody and, this company cares about me as a person first and foremost, right? Now, we try and do a lot of things to support that and, tangible things too. But I think at the heart of it, trying to really make it about that is a big part of it. So yeah, you can learn from both sides for sure.
Well, I think that's, I've seen you guys do this. I know you do this. I know you're a big proponent of Topeka. And I think that starts in wherever your community, whatever your community is. If you're a leader that's willing to pour into their community, I have a hard time thinking that's not going to spill over into everyone you lead. And, if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you're doing it for, I want the community at large to be a benefit for what we're doing.
Yeah,
man, that's going to show to everyone around you to realize, okay, that's a value set that you hold, and I better hold myself accountable to that. And if not, well, then I'm, disingenuous. You're like, why are you doing it? But I think that's one of the greatest ways for leaders to model a culture inside their corporate by how willing they are to say, hey, as a business, this is how involved I want us to be in our community. I want us to be involved in youth programs. I want us to be involved in, whatever civic, homeless, whatever it may be. I want to be involved in that. If we're involved in that, man, it's hard to find an organization, I think, that really struggles internally.
I had never thought of it from that perspective, but that's a great insight. So yeah, I love that. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna start using that.
It's all yours. It's all yours. Whatever. But I think when you stop, here's the caveat to that: is if it's not genuine, if it's not authentic to who you are, well, then you're just showing all your cards.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to show all your cards. I'm going to show you my hand. It's okay, right? But if I show you my hand and that's not who I am, well, it's going to come out and bite me. It's going to bite me hard.
Yeah, that's good. It's something we've done a lot of. It's important to me, and especially here in our community, we've invested. I don't say this in a braggadocious way. I'm not sure there's a business owner who's maybe invested more in the Topeka community over the last 5 years than I have. Opened a boutique hotel, 3 restaurants, redeveloped a bunch of real estate as our downtown was trying to get going. And people ask me all the time, like, I don't get, why are you investing in Topeka? So many people kind of talk down on it. And there's 2 reasons. And it's kind of going back to the pure motives of it. One, I live here, and we have 700 employees who live here. So I tell people that all the time. I'm like, why, if I have the ability and the means to do it, why would I not want to invest back in the community I live in to make it the best possible community it could be, right? So just taking pride in it first and foremost. The second reason I say all the time, selfishly, my son is 17, my daughter's 14. I want this to be a community. And that's honestly what got me going down this path probably 6-7 years ago. I would hear and see some of my friends who were a little older, whose kids had left, maybe were in college or out, talking about they never wanted to come back to Topeka. And I'm like, how do we change that? Because I hope my kids want to be in Topeka, right? I don't know if they will or not. I don't know where life will take them, but I don't want them to say, like, there's no opportunity, there's nothing to do here in this community. So my selfish motive would be like, I want my kids to stay close and, spend time around us and, be a part of this community too. So it's been fun, man. I'll tell you, it's to see a group of people, and it's not just me, there's a ton of great leaders that have really kind of taken this mantle to transform our community. And to see just in 5 or 6 years what's been able to happen is pretty fascinating. We went from, people never talked about Topeka to CNN just named us the best town for remote workers in the Midwest, so just, it's been neat to see it happen so quickly, and just being able to use some of the success that we've had here at AE to leverage that in some other ways in the community. I don't know that I would recommend people open restaurants or hotels. Like that's a tough business, but it's been fun to watch them work. So, I
mean, from a guy who grew up on a farm, who owned a gym, those are hard businesses.
Yes.
I mean, they're hard businesses.
Yep, they are.
One of the things that I kind of want to put a cap on this that you said that I think is so important, and you just talked about it. And it's something that a value that I hold on to. And I think for many other leaders that are our similar age, right? My kids are middle school, high school. Your kids are high school and very similar ages. Like, I want the community to be better for them. Mm-hmm. And if that's selfish, that's fine. Because what I also realize is wherever my kids go, whatever basketball my son plays, whatever soccer, football, basketball, whatever sports my other son plays, whatever dance and soccer my daughter's involved in, if I'm positively, in fact, impacting the environment where they're at, I'm positively impacting a lot of other families.
Yep.
And so, you know what? If that's selfish that I want to do that for my kids, then that's fine, because I'm not doing it just for my kid. I'm doing it for everyone. And if anyone wants to be involved, great, let's do it. Because I also recognize this. I can't affect the program they're in just by whatever happens with my son or daughter. Right. They're on teams of, 5 to 10 to, 15 other people. And it's like, well, however that team succeeds, they're going to succeed. Well, it's also, however that club or that organization, if the right coaches are there, if they have the right mindset and the vision and the passion, well, then all of a sudden it starts to become so much bigger. And you said that, and I believe it wholly. And I think more leaders need to be able to take that stance. And I think also here's another challenge for other leaders. And I know you probably do this. If someone comes to you and said, hey, Cody, my son or daughter's involved in something, I want to be more involved in that. I don't know where that's going to leave me here in my job, but it's important to me. It's important for all of us in our community. You'd probably be like, great, how do I support you?
Yeah.
How do we make that happen? And to me, if we do that as leaders, well, that gets back to doing what you were saying before about when we build our community, it helps all of our employees. It helps all of our families. It helps everyone, as opposed to, well, let's just stay on my little island.
Well, one other thing there that I've seen over the years, and it's probably a perspective that's changed, is if you're if you have people that are working with you on your team who are trying to take on some of those other responsibilities, like let's say they're going to go coach their kids, little league soccer team or whatever, club soccer team. The growth that creates in them as a leader, I mean, has this effect over in the workplace also, right? It challenges them to become a better leader too. So all of those things I think are a huge, when you look at maybe going back to almost even where we started, right? As people grow and develop, and they become better leaders, they're focused on their own personal growth and development. Like that's going to help your organization so much that you would want to encourage it at every opportunity that you had.
One of the things that I'll share with you, I've had this opinion. I'd much rather be an incubator than an incinerator. I'd rather keep, warm people so they grow and they blossom as opposed to I'm just going to put so much heat and fire on them
burn
and
them
out. And whenever they're gone, they're gone. I'll just bring in the next one. And it's really this adage that I hold on to: be an incubator, not an incinerator.
I'm going to steal that too.
You can have it. It's good. It's good. Just when the next time when I'm on stage there at Advisors Excel, I can say, oh no, Cody said that. I didn't say that. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's, again, it comes back to that growth. It's leading the way. It's saying, hey, this is important to me. And if you grow out of here, well, that's good for all of us because we all grow. And if I'm afraid to grow as a leader, well, then there's no way that I can be the leader that you need me to be. And if I don't help you grow, well, then I'm not going to grow and none of us are going to grow. So let's all grow together. And if that means we grow apart, well, so be it. That's fine. It's okay.
It's funny. We've had some, during COVID's created this. I think everyone's like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And we had some long-term team members and close personal friends that left and actually have started a business that in a way competes with us, right? Does the same thing. And I'll never forget, people ask all the time, oh, aren't you pissed about that? And I'm like, no, actually, I'm really proud of them. Like, I mean, to say you want your people to constantly be growing and developing and to be naive enough to think that would never mean that growth doesn't lead them to opportunities outside of here, I think is short-sighted. I heard probably the best description of this. I heard Nick Saban after he lost to Georgia in the championship game. So, right, Kirby Smart, his old defensive coordinator, goes to Georgia. They smack him in that championship game. He's like, don't get it wrong. I always want to win, right? So if I'm competing against Kirby, I want to win, but there's no one I'd rather lose to, and it just hit me like, what a great perspective of he wants those people to go on to have a ton of success. Now, he's going to do everything he can to beat them. Same thing. I said the same thing. I do everything we can to beat them, but I'm actually proud of the fact that they took that step. They were probably had hit kind of a ceiling here, and it was the step they needed to take to continue their own personal growth and development. Yeah.
Cody, great chatting with you, man.
Always,
Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate your time and your friendship as well.
Yeah.
And to know that I can just call you up and chat with you and ask these questions and have a great conversation and know that you're willing to support me as well.
Well, let's do it anytime. We should probably do it more frequently. Hopefully we can get together before November also and keep up the good work, man.
Hey, maybe I'll just have to make a trip to Topeka.
Let's do it. It's a growing, final thing I'll say, and it would just to everything we've talked about leadership. The other thing I've just seen over 17 years is when you build momentum, just not letting off as that momentum starts, right? I think early on in AE, we saw that and just kind of kept investing back in. And I'm seeing it right now in Topeka, over the last 5 or 6 years, the momentum that's been built. I think in 10 years, the city will look, kind of unimaginable to people just 10 years ago. So I think anyone, as you start to have success, whether you're in a leadership role, just continue to invest back in because, man, once that momentum starts stacking, it does some magical things.
Yeah, totally. We could talk a whole nother 45 minutes about that.
Agreed.
But thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Always, man. Great to catch up.
If you're a regular listener to the Impact Driven Leader podcast, you'll probably understand when I say this, that, Cody and I share a lot of the same philosophies. We're two cut from the same cloth, I believe. And it's, part of the mindset that if for your business to grow, you have to grow. That's something I subscribe to. That's something I believe. That's something that I've experienced myself professionally over the last 20 years is when I wasn't focused on growing, my business wasn't growing. But when I was focused on growing, my business was going to grow. Now, it wasn't always a direct. Sometimes there was a lag in there, And that's just a growth phase. I mean, it's like bamboo, right? Bamboo grows underground. It grows this massive root structure. And then all of a sudden, one day it shoots 40 feet in the air. And people are like, well, how'd that happen? It's because of everything that happened below the soil that allowed it. To me, that is growing and going to events and being around people that can sharpen you, that can meet you where you're at and say, hey, how can we get better? And to me, that's the value of the roundtable. That's the value of why I have the Impact Driven Leader Roundtable as part of our book club, as a caveat, as an add-on to this podcast. I'd love to invite you. We're going to start a new group in June. Would love for you to be a part of that. You can go to tylerdickerhoff.com. You can send me a message, email, let me know that you're interested in that. I'll make sure to save a space for you, limited in numbers, so that way you can get the biggest impact possible. I know the people that are a part of the roundtable now absolutely thrive on it and know that it is a key part of their development, transformation as a leader. But selfishly, I get a lot out of it too. And to me, that's what's really impactful. And I know you will as well, being a part of the roundtable. As I sign off here, one of the things that Cody said that I think is really impactful that I want you to stop, take a note of, and how can you implement this in your business? He said, the business that creates the best experience wins. How can you as a leader be a catalyst to impact, to make a change, where your business creates the best experience it can? It's a challenge. That's something I want to leave you with. I'd love for you to shoot me an email. Let me know what you took from that. Thanks for listening in. Appreciate it. As always, love a rating, a review, and a subscription. You can also watch this interview on YouTube if you didn't know that. Love for you to catch us there. And until next time, have a good one.